All right, our demonstrator for tonight, Bill Croft. He's going to be making, using, showing us the jigs he has, and it looks like a few other things. Let's give Bill a big hand.
Okay, well, it's more than jigs. Jigs and homemade tools and things that I adapted as tools. So most of these things I didn't invent, or I saw them somewhere and like on YouTube or somewhere, or maybe at one of the somebody's shop tours or whatever, right? So, okay. So first thing I'll show you is brushes. Everybody needs a bench brush, so I got this at Harbor Freight. And where did I get this? I don't remember where I got this, but this is a brush. I bought it. Oh, I bought this at the wood show down in Timonium. So that's for cleaning out your Morse taper. That's what I bought it for. I don't know what it's meant for. That's the thing I do. I look for something and I go, well, what could I use that for? And then it comes out. Okay, then I was given this awl, and I made an awl. So this one, and this is a handle for a center punch. I got those online from Mike Peace. He's a big famous turner in Georgia. So I bought a set of, I think they call it piano wire, but it's, I never seen a piano with wire that thick. But anyhow, and then I made a ferrule for it, and so I guess we could pass those around. Okay. Next thing. Oh, first thing I should do is mention safety. Safety glasses. I got the little shields. When I'm turning something small, this is what I use. If I'm turning something large, I use this. And I had never had anything break on me before until the other week, and I blew up a bowl. And I had fluorescent lights above the lathe, and one of them looks like a truck ran over it, literally. It hit me in the arm here. I didn't even feel it for like 6 hours until oh, something's there, and there's this big huge bruise. I got 2 on my hair, and it hit my hand, and I guess I was lucky. Oh, the other thing you want to, for safety, is dust mask. A lot of people start out and don't wear dust masks, and eventually they start getting coughs and stuff and can't figure out why. And so if you wear one, that won't happen to you. Right, John?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next item. I learned this from Joe. He takes a piece of something. I don't know what he uses. But I bought some foam. These are called foamies or something. I bought them at Walmart, and I was using them in my vacuum chuck stuff. So when I'm finishing a piece, so like I have this in the chuck and I want to finish it, I just put this down on the lathe underneath it, and that way I don't get all the finish on the lathe bed. When I'm turning with, well, that bowl, which was a piece of wood John gave me, I put this there, and this absorbs the water that comes out of it because it was green wood. So, you know, it's just looking for something that you can use, but anyhow.
That foam stuff, I also cut it up and use it to put super glue on, like ink pens and stuff.
Oh, okay.
It works good.
Good, okay. Well, you know, it's okay, the next thing I want to talk about is removable lathe handles. When I first joined over at York, we had Jimmy Cluse come in. I think some of you guys went over to that. And I think the next week he went down to Frederick. So anyhow, he uses these quick release. And I got one, and I didn't have it fit, so I had my brother turn down the bottom of this so that I could have a... Some things you need to sharpen them. You can't do it if this isn't long enough or whatever because there's interference. But anyhow. The other thing I did, there was an article in American Wood Turner about making removable pieces, so I did that. So this is a what do you call it? A flare fitting. Okay, so you cut slots in this and you drill it out and you drill this out to be just exactly. They're close, but they're not exactly right. And then you can put that on there and. Okay, and I do that on this one because I have this other little fitting and I mark every other flat on it red and I drill it out and then I put it on here and I tighten that up. That way when I lay it on my tool rest on the grinder, I just make sure I can always see a red. So I put that there like that, and then I tighten this screw there so that it doesn't move. But anyhow, so I see a red, then I turn it a red, and I'll get a three-pointed tool. Otherwise, how do you know, this one hasn't been done. It's got a whole bunch of points. So that's not, you know. And the article said you could do it for 3/8 and a half. Of course, me being the guy that I am, I tried it with a 1/4 too. So it'll work with a 1/4 too. Okay. Excuse. Okay. I made a bunch of I got a bunch of drill rods. I bought them online, and so yeah, that on that center punch. I just bought the center punch at Harbor Freight. They're not really that great of a center punch, but they handle them. They work, yeah. Anyhow, so I was making a bunch of tools. Oh, and when I make the tools, like this one, I put an SK 1/4, so that's a 1/4 inch skew. So when I put it down, I can read what it is. I have a bucket with a bunch of pieces of plastic pipe in it, and then I just stick these in this way, and I can see from the top what they are. Okay. Okay. I saw this in American Wood Turner. You buy these. I put my chucks, jaws in them, so I keep a bunch of, I don't know, I have probably half a dozen or more.
Bill, if you collect the coupons from Harbor Freight,
That,
you can go buy a 39-cent paintbrush and get one of those free.
that's correct. He's very right. There's a bunch of stuff at Harbor Freight. It's just like this engraver. I engraved on most of my tools my name. You can get this from Craft Supply or PSI, and they're $20. If you go to Harbor Freight, it's exactly the same one, and it's $9. So, yeah. And it works. I mean, I marked most of these things, like even this, I'm put my name in it just. Okay. Pushing for a live center. Okay. If I want to put pressure on something to keep it in when I'm turning, you know, I don't want to rely on whatever is holding it in the chuck, then you could put a live center at the back. But if you don't want the little mark, if you buy a bushing, you get a bigger flat surface because it, okay? And you put, and it's, you know, quick. It's real easy to put on. You don't have to even screw it. You just stick it there and it works. Okay, so I brought everything in tonight in this big container. And yeah, it's good for bringing stuff to places like this, but that's not what I bought it for. I put it underneath my lathe. I have a shelf there. I stick it underneath, on the shelf under the lathe, and a lot of my chips go in here. And then, huh? That's a genius. No, it's just what I do. And then, once it gets about half full, you can put your tools in there. And they're just sort of separated. They don't bang against each other because there's all these wood chips in there to separate them. Okay? And when I get done, I can pick it up and carry it out, and I dump it in the garden. No, I take the chisels out. I did dump something. I left something fell in there, and I didn't know. But when I dumped it out in the garden, I found it. So, yeah. Oh, speaking of which, when you lose something, and it's a piece of metal, like, I don't know, whatever, and it happens, and you got chips all over the floor, you can use a magnet to pick it up, or there's an app you can get on your phone called Metal Detector.
Here are some results from a search.
Yeah, right. Anyhow, you turn that on, and when you run your phone, I did some checking to see what part of the phone the sensor is in, and in my case it's down here. So if I run it near a piece of metal, it'll show you that it's there. Okay, I hadn't thought about doing that until, yeah. Okay, yes?
That loaded punch that you sent around
Yes.
for doing woodwork in particular, I'll take and take the end off of it, put it in my drill with the point sticking out, and run it on the grinder and make the point much steeper.
Yeah, you can do that. I like I said, I bought a bunch of drill rod, so I did that, and when I'm doing the stuff with my my pen vise, I have a sharp point then that's centered because I'll spin it on the, and I chuck that in my drill press, and I can center it that way, and I have a, yes?
Do you, your drill rod, do you harden it?
No.
Or do you just leave it in natural state?
Actually, I think they are hardened when you get them. Some of them are and some of them aren't. It depends on where you get them and what they are. So, yeah. Okay. Another thing you want to do, a calculator. Okay? There's a lot of different kinds of calculators. What you want to do is get one that handles fractions. So this calculator will handle, you know, like 1 1/4 plus a 1/2 inch plus 5/8, and then add it all up and tell you what it is. Okay?
And there's also a lot of apps for your phone.
Yes, there's apps for your phone that can do it. Yeah, yeah.
Checking angles and all that.
Right. Also, what I do, later I'll show you, there's a formula, I write it on a piece of paper in here so I know, so that I can set the offset here for when I'm doing my segmented work, because you need to know how wide the widest part of it is. And so there's a formula for doing that, and so I put that on there so I don't forget it. Uh-oh, where is that? Okay. I have this little drill bit. My dad used to have a shop, and he used those for drilling out spot welds. But I use it, I chuck it up, and I want a center on to drill something big. I'll drill this first, and then I'll put the other drill, and that'll make sure it stays in this. It goes in the center, and the bit doesn't wander. Okay. Okay. So. Okay. I bought this tape. It's double-sided tape. I bought it at Lowe's a few years ago. It's fairly thick, and I put it on a little piece of wood and faceplate, and then I can mount something else like this. If this was flat, I could just stick it there, bring up my tailstock, let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then I can turn. And you don't have to glue. You know, a lot of times people glue with either yellow glue or with CA glue. I just put it on with that. Here's a piece where it's what's left after I did it. You can pry this off then if you want. Okay. Okay. Okay, when you're turning tenons, a lot of times you want to, say, a 1/2-inch tenon. What I do is I grind, take a 1/2-inch wrench, I grind this edge off a little bit, and then I just push it up again there, and it's a little over 1/2 inch when you get done. Okay? So that gets you all the way down to the near 1/2 inch, and then you can finish it off with another tool and like either hold the skew up or whatever. And okay, so what was the other thing? Oh, yes. So, for example, I wanted to put a tenon on something. Then I have a collet chuck. How many of you have seen collet chucks? I know you do because you got them. But a lot of people don't even know they exist. But that's called a collet chuck. You stick that back in there. You screw that in, and this goes into your headstock, and you tighten it up like, okay, and you can put your thing. Now, when you do that, you can only do it on good wood. Let's put it that way. If you do it on something that's punky, it'll break right off. But so if say you had some hard maple or something like that, ash maybe, that's fine. But for example, if you had sassafras, it probably wouldn't. It'd probably just break off. Sassafras isn't very strong wood. Or if you have something that looks nice but is, I don't know, is real punky, it won't. Huh?
What are you using that for?
Maybe doing finials or different stuff like that. Knobs, yeah.
Oh, so you're just putting the end of it into that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you would use this to make the 1/2 inch, and then you might not have to do anything because this thing is actually a little over 1/2 inch, and then you can squeeze it down. So you just, yeah. Okay. So now I'll go to my sharpening tools stuff. When you buy a sharpener, they oftentimes come with a little thing that hangs off the side so they're mostly useless. This one does have a groove in it, so I guess you could sharpen a drill bit, but I didn't. I took it off and never put it back on. So I did try, I try a bunch of different things. I got these things from Craft Supply, and if you have a a one-way jig to sharpen your tools. If you put this end in the bottom and then this again the wheel, and you can move that in and out. This one's 40 degrees, this one's 35. They go all the way from like, I don't know, 25 up to 50 or 60. 60. These are quick, fast. I mean, yeah, I like them. They work. There's a bunch of stuff that they sell that doesn't work, but that does work. The other thing I do when I'm sharpening is I take a magnet, stick it in a plastic bag. When I get all done, I take this and run it around on the table of my grinder. It gets all full of shavings. I take it over to the wastebasket. I pull the magnet out and I shake it, and all the shavings go down in the wastebasket. And if you did it with just the magnet, then they'd be stuck here and you'd be forever trying to get them off. But if you put it in a plastic bag, they come off fine. Yeah, this is a Harbor Freight special too. Yes, you're right, John. Then, if you're doing scrapers, I didn't make this. I got this from a sale of Dick Dial's deal stuff. He was one of the founders of the York Club, I understand, long before my time. But anyhow, he made this and he put a carbide rod at an angle, and then you just put your scraper here, be sort of like this, and you just rub it up again there, and that'll put a burr on the edge. Oh, okay. If you put this on, this isn't a scraper, but if it was, you know, you would put that on there and run it again there, and that'll put a burr on the edge. People that do cabinetry, that's how they do their scrapers. Okay? Especially, a lot of them use just the piece of flat metal, and you want to sharpen that. But it'll work for your scrapers for your wood turning too. A lot of people also just take it and put it again in the grinder to get that burr, but why? If you use something like this, then you don't cut away as much metal. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I was having trouble changing blades on my table saw. So I saw this nifty little tool, and you put it down and you run the blade up, and then you supposedly can take the table saw blade, the blade off the table saw. It works, but not real super. So I happened to look in there in my table saw, and I saw that, oh, there's a place where two flat sides on it. So I thought, oh, maybe I can get a wrench. So I found out, measured the distance, and I went and bought a wrench, and it was too wide, but I ground it down, and so I used that and the wrench that came with it. Oh, you see the one end is white? That's because that's the end I used to stick in there. The other end is bigger. That way I don't have to try it twice. I only have to do it once. Okay?
If you're retired, you'd have more time.
Huh?
If you're retired, you'd have more time.
I am retired. Okay. Another thing I saw was UHMW plastic, and so I made a piece. I got a piece that's 1 inch in diameter, and I screwed up. It's not centered. The hole isn't centered. But if it was centered, you can put it on this, and now you can use that if you're doing finials, and you screw up and don't get the end. I usually leave a little piece at the end because the point comes down, and that's like the last thing I take off. But if I screw up, then I can just put the point in here and it'll, this is real slippery stuff. So it just, and it's soft. It's not real hard. So, anyway. Pretty good. Okay. Here, you want to pass that around? So I just bought a rod of that. So, okay. Another thing I do, I use WD-40 a lot to clean the ways of my lathe. And it also helps to clean and lubricate the tool rest, the banjo. You got that rod underneath and it gets gummed up and stuff, and WD-40 takes that off pretty well. There's a lot of things you can do with WD-40. So.
Well, it's good, you can buy it in bulk too.
Yeah.
You can buy it in bulk, it's cheaper.
Okay.
Buy it in a spray can.
Yeah, that's a long time. I imagine. I'd buy a gallon, but that's a bunch of them.
That'd last me till I died or beyond. No. Okay. I do have some taps that I got to make face plates. I used them when I demonstrated the vacuum chucks a couple years ago. So I use this, I cut a square hole and then I can just turn this to turn the tap. I'm not using a lathe tonight, but anyhow. Let's see. Oh. I have a circle cutting jig that I bought. It's from Carter Products. They're the people, I don't know, everything they make is like that blue there. So you drill, like say you had a board and you make a center and you wanted to cut a circle out before you put it on the lathe. Okay, so you could figure out where the center is, drill a hole that's I think it's a 1/4 inch. That's what this has, a hole in it. It's a 1/4 inch. And you can then put that on this jig and spin it around and you cut a circle. But now you want to mount that on a faceplate to turn it, for example. So what I do now, you need to know how to get the center of the board on the faceplate. So this tool does that. You put the rod is in the box here, but you put the rod through here, this down, and then you screw that down, and now it's centered, and you put the screws in. And this one I used just regular screws. If you want, this one I have nuts on the end, or bolt hex heads. So you can take, I have one of these, so it quick spinner. It's a lot faster for me. Okay. Well, and this I have is the piece originally came with, it's 1" 1/8. This is an adapter for 1" 1/8 to 1¼ inch 8. If you were wondering what the black piece is. Okay. Okay. Tom Deneen showed the people at the York Club about making little clamps out of PVC pipe. So all you do is you get a piece of PVC pipe and you cut it, and then you make one. I made one slice. He makes two, so he has a gap in here. Makes it easier to go. But so that. Oh, and I got two different sizes. This you get in the plumbing area at, say, Lowe's. This you get in the electrical area. This is conduit. 2-inch conduit or 2 1/4, I don't know. Okay, let's see. Okay, what have I forgotten? Oh yes, gloves. When I turn, a lot of times the chips will come back and they're hot and they burn it actually hurts my hand. So I got the pair of gloves. Now these are weightlifting gloves, I guess. I got them at Walmart, but they actually have a piece of foam in here too. Your fingers are not covered, so you can grab something, but it keeps the hot chips from hurting your hand. I noticed that Totally Turning, there was one of the guys, I think it was John Jordan. He said he was saying he buys gloves, leather gloves. He gets them, they're full fingered and stuff, and he puts them on, and then he's got two right hand he always puts it on his left hand, so then the right hand he turns inside out and wears it on his left hand. He turns a lot, so they must. I thought it was just me when I was finding something to help me, but apparently that happens to other people too. So okay. Okay. To make a lot of the jigs I make, I was needing knobs. And I would buy knobs that had, well, like the knob on this one. Okay, it comes with a little nut in there, and you screw it on, and that's your knob. Well, I decided that, I found these that don't have anything in there. And you can put a nut in there. And what you do is you put CA glue in, you put the nut in, and now you got one with a nut. Or if you take a hex head bolt, you can put that down, and then you can have any length if you want the opposite. So I'm recommending these kind of knobs anyhow. And if when you do this, I chuck this up in the vise, put the glue in, and then I can spin it off, and that way the glue doesn't screw up the threads. Okay. Also, when I'm making jigs, sometimes I need like a T-nut. So there's a little T-nut that you can screw on. Or if you want a bolt, this is a bolt from a toilet, the down that goes at the floor. Okay. Or you can just use, where is it? You can use a carriage bolt, and sometimes if you don't want it quite that wide, you can put it on your grinder and grind it down to make it more like, one of these. Okay. When I'm turning something, especially like pens, I either use this kind of sandpaper, and what I do is I mark on the back each grit as I cut it, and then I staple it together, and now I got some that are the mesh, and that does the same thing. So okay. If you're turning a vase or something, and you get all the chips inside, I have an air compressor, but it's loud. It makes a lot of noise. I don't like it. So this is my air compressor. I just put this down and I blow it out. So I save my straws from time to time, and that's what I use. Okay. If you use a pointed tool to make a scratch around, like on a spindle, and you want to highlight it, you put this around and spin, and it'll get hot, and the smoke will come off, and then you burn a thing. This is just plain wire. I have several different thicknesses, and then I found that they will get hot and break. But if you get stainless steel, apparently they don't break as easy. Okay. I'm constantly getting junk in the mail, like here's one from National Geographic, here's a thing from Audubon, here's one from Xfinity. They send you these little cards. They're real. So instead of throwing them away, I save them and use them to clean off glue. Well, you know, if I get a little extra, you know, I can clean that off, and then I throw this away later, right? So I'm cheap at some things. When I make my Christmas ornaments, I need a stand. So I take a piece of a limb, put it on this, and I cut it at an angle, and I drill a little hole there, and now I got a base, and I put a piece of brass rod in it, and I got a stand. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, yes. When I cut stuff with this, I'll put them in these little containers that butter came in. I learned this from Fred back there at his shop tour. So I just cut them and put them in there and mark on it, those are walnuts, and these are cherry, and those are maple. So I didn't spend anything for those. Oh. I have a lot of wood that's in pieces like this, and so what I do is I use a red pen and I mark on its maple 7/8 of an inch, 2.5 inches wide, and I put it up on the shelf, so when I go to find it, I know what it is. I don't have to take out my tape measure. I do it once, and okay. The other thing with the table saw. This is a push piece, obviously. You can make your own, but my fence has two sides that are made out of that ultra high molecular weight. I put those on the side. It originally came with pieces of Formica on a piece of cheap wood, but I put those on because they're a lot slicker and it's smoother. So between there, I cut a piece of wood, put it there, put a slot in it. So now I drop that in there, and my push piece is always sitting there. I don't have to go looking around for it. Okay, so I got the idea for this from Jim Stottlemyre. He had one, he just clamped it down. I put these things on to keep that. And my table saw has a fence that has a T-track in it. So if you look at the bottom of this, you see those carriage bolts that have been ground down, and then the top has been ground a little bit so it'll fit in there. So
I'm sorry, what are you using that for?
this is a vise for pen blanks.
Yeah, but what you said you put it on a table saw.
I meant the drill press.
Okay.
It's got its tape. The table on the drill press. Excuse me. Okay, so when I first was thinking about doing stuff that is making Christmas ornaments, I had seen Bill Fordney's demo on that several years ago. I guess it was right after I joined. It was the meeting I joined, I think, yes. And he made them by using sticks, like he would cut them and I guess glued them together, and then he would mount that and turn a bunch of different Christmas ornaments, okay? I had trouble getting them so they were all the same and getting the right angle. But I knew I had to get the right width, so that's when I made this. This fits on my table saw. This fits in the slot. I can take the piece of wood. I don't know how to do this exactly. Okay, if there's a fence over here, I can bring it up like this. And then when I go beyond that, now I can reproduce the same width every time and just keep moving the fence over, because the distance between this and the blade is fixed. It's fixed by this runner here staying. Okay, so all I have to do is move the fence. I don't have to remeasure anything. Okay, but I still couldn't get the angles right, so I kept looking for something else that was a different way of doing it. So in looking for something else that was a different way of doing it, I ended up finding the wedgie sled method. So this is the wedgie sled. I know. This is the piece that measures the... Is that mine? Probably because I bent over, huh? No, I don't know. This does the same thing, only it's on the other side. Shut it off. Okay, so this one works the same as that other one, but I mount it on the other side where the fence would normally be, and then it's got a these two pieces here allow you to set your caliper to the right width. You use the formula that I have, and you set that, and so now all the pieces will be the same width. You need to make this piece. This is your zero clearance insert for your table saw. And then you have this rides in it, and you put your board in against there or here. You go cut one, I'll show you. And you have to set these fences, and you can buy pieces like this that are made out of plastic, and you would adjust them. That's how you get the correct angles. Okay, and I bought a set of these made out of plastic, the ultra high molecular weight stuff, and it had 16, 24, 32, 48 segments. So that's fine if you're doing platters and stuff. For the Christmas ornaments, I think about the highest I want to go to is 18, because it'll just be too busy otherwise. It'll be too many small pieces. So And this one works. This is how I made most of these. This is one partway done. I'm showing here. I turned this. I use a. When you make them, there you end up. If you do the calculations and all, and make them the right size, you end up with a 1/4-inch hole in the middle. And so that'll fit on a pen vent mandrel. And then when I drill a 5/8-inch hole because I decide I need to clear it out this inside. So I have a tool that'll go in and do that, but you need a 5/8-inch hole, so that's why there's a 5/8-inch hole. So that's what the top is. And once you get it, when you finally get done, you bring this all the way down and you get close to the 1/4 inch and it'll fall off. And then this is the tool from pen mandrel that you use. And so you put that in there and it smooths that bottom all up. And this one, it doesn't work because I ended up having to, the hole is too big, but whatever. Let's see, what else do I have to? Oh, when you're making these jigs, you need a you need the holes to be the same and the holes in the base to be the. So you make a jig like this, and you set your router on it, and you use this double-sided tape. Here, you can pass that around. That's double-sided tape on. That's what the. So it works. The guy that thought of this really did a pretty good job, but he assumed that everybody is laying their boards flat. So he assumed that you were putting boards on there like that. What I'm doing is I want things that are taller than that with my Christmas ornaments, so I wanted them this way rather than that way. And so I put these pieces of aluminum to raise it up. But even at that, with the height of the bed, or whatever you call this, platform, I can't get much over this height. So that's when I came up with this contraption here. Well, how I got to doing the things was, several years ago the club did the Christmas ornaments, and we made a Christmas ornament, just one piece of wood. Then I says, well, I want to try something. So I was just going to try different shapes. And I took 2 pieces of wood and I glued them together and then cut them and made a. And then I tried it with 4 pieces of wood. And then I says, oh, that was when okay, now once you get beyond 4 pieces of wood, you no longer have 90-degree angles here. So that's when I got into the segmented turning. So I've done a bunch of them. Once I cut them, I put hose clamps or the things so you can pass these around and see the difference. The reason I was doing this is I was trying to see what colors look good. I had cherry, maple, walnut, and then I got a piece of yellow heart, and that's what's on that one. Oh. And when you get done turning these, you'll end up with pieces of wood that are left in your chuck. Okay, because you know it'll be the bottom down here, and you know you part it off, and so you get a piece thing like that. So I'm going to use that to make some tops. So you know, if I take a 1/4 inch dowel and stick it through there and turn that, I'll have a top. Okay. Is there anything I've forgotten? Oh, this is another tool. This is for doing if you're doing an inside dovetail yeah. So this is just for that. This was one that I didn't make it, but I picked it up somewhere. Okay. What else is here? Oh yes. And then I have, this is a chatter tool, and this is a burr for doing the same thing. Basically, you're making little grooves in the side of a box, in the bottom of a box, for example, or something like that when you're turning.
Do end grain, or your chatter tool will only do end grain.
Actually, no, that's not true. I was told that, yes, but that I've also seen where people have done it with side grain, but you have to hold it at a different position. That's what I was told. I haven't tried it, but they had pictures of the guy doing it in the magazine, so, or in a book, I'm not sure which. I don't know. Okay. Okay, so then, I don't know, how much time do I got? Am I running over?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Need to throw it a little bit.
Yep. Okay. Okay, so what you do to use this, what do I do with them? Oh, there. You would take one of these, you would stick it in there, and you would move this back, slide that in. It's tight on both sides. You tighten these. Okay, now you got the angle. Then okay, this piece here is how you zero it. You set that up initially, then from then on you don't have to touch it. But you can use your calipers and measure this distance. I didn't bring my calipers tonight. I forgot them. So I have some pieces of wood. I'll stick that in there. Okay, so that way they'll all be the same. Well, guess what? We gotta plug it in. Okay. I forgot. Yeah.
That should do it.
Okay. So I'm going to make one cut on the end, and the piece that comes off I throw away to get the correct angle. That's the piece that gets thrown away. Then you move it up. You just take it and move it to the other side. And there's your piece. The one side's a little fuzzy, but pass it around. It's just the way. You don't need to sand it. You don't need. Then you just move it back.
Now, do you throw that next piece away?
No.
Yeah, it'll come out right.
Everything, yeah. Well, you say. Huh? I don't know. It's for 16 sides.
15? Okay.
Yeah. That's what, 11 1/4? I think. Here, you pass that around. So you just keep moving it back and forth and making cuts. It's pretty quick. So I can just... Like I said, you can see how fast you can cut them. Okay, then the next thing I do, after you get a bunch of them, I didn't do enough here, but I have a bunch of different kind of hose clamps. This one actually has a little thing on it so you can do it by hand. The other thing I do is I'll use this with a hose clamp that's, where are they? I guess I passed them around. Anyhow. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, forgot. On my drill press, I put a magnet with a hook on it, and I made this little, I don't know, this cloth and thing was probably from some name tag or something like you'd wear like this. So I tied that on there, put that there, and I put that on my drill press, and when I want my key, it's always there. I take it down, use it, stick it back. So I know where my key is. I kept losing them. So I have 2 keys, but this is the original.
Something I did with my chuck key, glued a magnet on top of it, on that flat surface at the upper end.
Yep.
And just stick it back on the, I guess, the round part of the...
Yeah, mine, it did. This number 3 isn't flat, that isn't flat. And when I did it with some other things, I used CA glue, and it came off. So I did it this way.
It's been on there for about 3 or 4 years.
Well, mine didn't last but a couple months, and it came off. So I even did it with pencils, because I want to, a lot of times I'll have pencils all over the place. And also I'll go to Harbor Freight, and every time they have their little coupons, I get a bunch of these. So I have one of these at this saw, one at the table saw, one at the band saw, one at the other band saw. I got them all over the shop, so I never have to look for them very far. They're cheap enough, you know? Is there anything else I forgot? I guess that's it.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep.